I remember the exact moment. I realized the clown wasn't part of the carnival anymore. My flashlight beam was shaking so badly, it looked like a strobe cutting through the trees. My breathing sounded too loud in the silent forest, like the woods themselves were listening. At first, I thought the crunch of leaves behind me was just an animal. Then it happened again. Slow, deliberate. Footsteps. I turned the flashlight around, and for a split second the beam caught something pale between the trees. White face paint. A red smile that looked too wide in the darkness. And that was the moment I understood something that made my stomach drop. The clown from the carnival had followed me into the woods. This happened when I was 12 years old enough to walk around my neighborhood alone, but still young enough that my mom didn't think much of it when I wanted to go somewhere at night. We lived in a pretty normal suburban neighborhood, the kind with quiet streets, streetlights on every corner, and kids riding bikes until the sun went down. But our block was a little different. It was a dead end that backed up to a forest preserve. Across the street from our house, there was a large drainage sump, and behind that was a thick stretch of woods. If you walked through those woods for about half a mile, you'd eventually come out at a small community park. Most kids in the neighborhood used the path during the day. At night, though, it felt different. The trees were so thick that even moonlight barely got through. But one Saturday night, something unusual was happening at the park. A small traveling carnival had set up there. We could hear it from our backyard. Faint music, distant cheers, and the metallic screech of rides spinning. My mom was standing in the kitchen when I mentioned it. "Can I go check it out?" I asked. She looked at the clock. It was a little after 8:30. "You'll take a flashlight?" she asked. I nodded. She shrugged. "Be back before 11. That was it. My mom was always like that. She trusted me to be smart. I grabbed a flashlight from the garage and headed out. The path into the woods started behind the sump. As soon as I stepped under the trees, the carnival sounds became clearer. Music, generators humming, people laughing. The flashlight beam bounced across tree trunks as I walked, and every once in a while, something would rustle in the brush. Probably raccoons or deer. Still, I walked a little faster. After about 10 minutes, the trees thinned and the park came into view. The carnival lights were glowing through the darkness like something out of a dream. There was a Ferris wheel turning slowly, its lights blinking red and yellow. A small roller coaster clattered along a track. A few spinning rides creaked and rattled as they moved. The whole place smelled like fried dough, popcorn, and grease. It wasn't crowded. Actually, it felt almost too quiet for a carnival. Groups of people walked between booths, but most of the rides only had a few riders at a time. Near the center of the park stood a large circus tent. Red and white stripes. A line of people was slowly walking inside. Curious, I followed them. Inside the tent were about 4 rows of folding chairs, facing a small wooden stage. Maybe 20 people were sitting there. On the stage were 3 clowns. One was riding a tiny tricycle in circles. Another was juggling bowling pins. The third one was dancing. And something about the way he moved felt strange. His arms jerked too sharply. His steps were stiff, like someone trying to imitate what they thought a clown should look like. The juggling clown suddenly laughed. Loud. Too loud. The sound echoed strangely in the tent. I stood near the entrance watching. Then the dancing clown noticed me. He stopped mid-step. Slowly, he turned his head toward me. Even from across the tent, I could see his painted smile. He tilted his head, then raised one finger. He curled it slowly, beckoning me closer. The way he did it made my skin crawl. The audience laughed, thinking it was part of the show. But he wasn't looking at them. He was staring directly at me, still curling that finger. "Come here." I didn't move. The clown took a few exaggerated steps toward the edge of the stage. Still staring, still motioning. That was enough for me. I turned and walked out of the tent. Outside, the carnival felt less creepy again. Lights, music, normal noise. I ended up running into a kid from school named Ethan near one of the game booths. We played a couple of those carnival games where you throw rings onto bottles. We talked for a while. Time passed faster than I expected. Eventually, the ride started shutting down. The music stopped. Workers began turning off lights. Ethan said his parents were picking him up, so we said goodbye. I started heading back toward the fence that led to the woods. That's when I heard someone behind me. "Hey." The voice was low. I turned. My stomach dropped. It was the dancing clown. But now he wasn't bouncing around or acting silly. He was standing completely still. Up close, his makeup looked different. Messier. The white paint was cracked and smeared. The red smile was crooked. "Show's over," he said quietly. His voice didn't sound playful at all. "I can show you something cooler, though." Something about the way he said that made every alarm in my head go off. "No thanks," I said quickly. Then I turned and climbed over the fence into the woods. I expected him to follow right away. But when I looked back, he was still standing there, just watching me, that painted smile glowing under the carnival lights. I turned and kept walking. After a minute, the carnival noise faded again. The woods were dark and quiet. My flashlight beam bounced across the dirt path. Leaves crunched under my shoes. Then I heard it. Crunching. Behind me. I stopped. The sound stopped too. I turned around and shined the flashlight down the path. Nothing. Just trees. I kept walking. 30 seconds later. Crunch. I spun around again. Still nothing. My heart was beating faster now. Maybe I was just paranoid. Then I reached a bend in the trail. And that's when I saw him, standing between two trees. The clown, at least 50 feet behind me. How had he gotten there so fast? I hadn't even heard him enter the woods. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then he started walking toward me. Slowly, I backed up. My flashlight beam shook. That's when I noticed something else. Movement deeper in the trees. Another figure. Tall, standing beside something dark. A vehicle. A van. Parked just off the trail. The back doors were open. And suddenly, everything made horrible sense. I turned and ran. Branches whipped against my arms. Leaves exploded under my feet. Behind me, I heard the clown start running too. His footsteps pounded against the dirt path. Fast. Too fast. I risked a glance back. He was closer. His painted face was smeared now with sweat. And he was smiling for real. I ran harder. My foot caught on a root. I stumbled. Nearly fell. Behind me, I heard him laugh. Not a clown laugh. A real one. I pushed myself faster. The trees started thinning ahead. The road had to be close. Suddenly, something grabbed the back of my jacket. For one horrifying second, I felt the fabric pull tight. I twisted and yanked free. The jacket tore. I didn't stop running. The road appeared through the trees. Street lights. Houses. Safety. The moment I burst out of the woods, the footsteps behind me stopped. I turned around. The clown was standing just inside the tree line, breathing hard, watching me. There was a small article on the bottom corner of the page, a picture of a kid about my age. Missing. Last seen near the park the same night as the carnival. Witnesses reported seeing a man dressed as a clown talking to children near the woods. My stomach felt cold. The police believed the man might have been traveling with the carnival. But when they tracked down the company that ran it, they said something that made the story even worse. According to their records, they only had 2 clowns performing that night, not 3, and they had no idea who the dancing clown was. I don't walk empty roads at night anymore. Even now, years later, if I see a narrow stretch of pavement disappearing into the woods, I turn around. I don't care if it makes me look paranoid. I don't care if people laugh. Because that summer I learned something. Silence in the woods doesn't mean you're alone. Sometimes it just means something is waiting. And sometimes it's been watching you for a long time before you ever notice it. I was 14 when this happened. I lived in a tiny town in South Carolina that most people had never even heard of. The population was around 130 people, maybe a little more if you counted the farms outside town. There was 1 gas station, 1 church, and 1 lumber yard. That lumber yard was where I got my first job. Near the end of summer, the owner hired me to help customers load boards and plywood into their trucks. It wasn't hard work, mostly lifting, stacking, and sweeping sawdust. But for a 14-year-old kid, it felt like a big deal. The best part was that my house was exactly 1 mile away. There was a single road connecting the lumber yard to the edge of town where my house sat. No houses in between. Just woods. Thick Carolina forest on both sides of the road. Every night when my shift ended around 9:30, I would start my walk home. I usually put my earbuds in and listened to music while the crickets and frogs screamed in the trees around me. The moon would light the road just enough to see. It never scared me. At least not at first. The first weird thing happened about a week after I started working there. That night the air was humid and the forest sounded louder than usual. Crickets, frogs, and something rustling in the brush every now and then. I was about halfway home when I heard it. A laugh. High-pitched. Sharp. Almost like someone trying to imitate a cartoon character. I stopped walking. What the hell was that? I muttered out loud. The sound had come from the woods on my left. I pulled one earbud out and stood still. The forest kept making its usual noise. Crickets, frogs, wind moving through the leaves. But no laugh. After about 20 seconds, I shook my head and kept walking. I figured it was probably just some weird animal noise. The next day, I walked to work in the afternoon like usual. About halfway there, I kicked a rock across the pavement while walking. The rock rolled toward the side of the road and bumped into something red. At first, I thought it was a piece of trash. But when I picked it up, I realized what it was. A clown nose. Bright red rubber. The cheap kind that squeezes and squeaks. I squeezed it once. It made that classic rubber honk sound. I laughed and stuck it in my pocket. When I got to work, I showed it to the guys there. One of the older workers named Dave chuckled and said, "Where the hell did you find that?" "On the road," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "That's creepy." "Why?" He shrugged. "Used to be a carnival that came through here years ago. Real sketchy one. Burned down one night out by the woods." Another guy laughed. Dave tells that story to every new kid. I didn't think much of it. I kept the clown nose in my pocket the whole shift. Later that night, around 9, 30, I started my walk home again. This time I had forgotten my earbuds, which meant all I could hear were the forest noises. The frogs sounded like they were right next to the road. Crickets buzzed so loud it almost felt like the sound was vibrating in my ears. The moon was brighter that night. About 15 minutes into my walk, I noticed something ahead of me. Something standing in the road. My first thought was deer. We had a lot of them around there. But something about the way it stood there felt wrong. It wasn't moving. It was just there. I slowed down. When I got closer, the shape suddenly bolted off the road and disappeared into the woods. But the way it ran didn't look like a deer. It moved too fast, too awkward. I kept walking, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. That's when I heard footsteps. Behind me, bare feet hitting pavement. Slow, about 20 yards back. My heart jumped into my throat. I started turning around. Hey there. The voice was right behind me. I spun around, and that's when I saw him, standing in the middle of the road. A clown. At first, my brain couldn't even process it. He was tall, maybe 6 feet. His clown costume was filthy. The colors were faded and stained like it had been dragged through mud for years. The white makeup on his face was cracked and smeared. Black paint circled his eyes so heavily that they looked almost completely dark, like empty holes. His head tilted slightly to the side as he stared at me. He was barefoot. His feet were black with dirt, and he was breathing slowly through his mouth. Then he smiled. "You have something of mine." His voice sounded calm, almost playful, but there was something wrong with it. Something cold. I took a step back. "I don't have anything of yours." He let out a quiet giggle, a horrible high-pitched giggle. "Well," he said softly, "if you don't have my nose." His arm moved behind his back, and then he pulled something forward. A machete. The blade looked old. Rust covered most of it, but I could still see darker stains near the edge. "Then I guess," he continued, dragging the blade across the asphalt, "I'm going to need yours." The metal scraped against the road. Screech. Sparks flickered in the dark. My body reacted before my brain did. I turned and ran. My shoes pounded against the pavement as I sprinted down the road. Behind me, I heard bare feet slapping against asphalt. Fast, too fast, and the sound of metal scraping. The clown was dragging the machete behind him. Screecha, 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 and he was laughing. That same horrible laugh from the woods the night before. My lungs started burning almost immediately. I wasn't a runner, but adrenaline pushed my legs harder than they had ever moved. Then I heard something else. Branches snapping in the woods beside the road. Running, like something else was moving out there, keeping pace with us. The realization hit me like ice water. The clown knew this road. He knew exactly where I would be walking. I glanced into the woods while running. That's when I saw it. Something hanging from a tree branch just off the road. Red, then another, and another. Clown noses. Dozens, swinging gently from the branches like horrible little ornaments. Under them were pieces of clothing. A torn shirt, a jacket sleeve, something dark nailed into the tree trunk. I didn't look long enough to understand what it was. My stomach twisted. Someone had been here before me. Up ahead, I saw headlights cresting the hill. A truck. Relief exploded in my chest. I started waving my arms while running. Help! The truck slowed down. But before I reached it, something grabbed the back of my shirt. I hit the ground hard. The air exploded out of my lungs. The clown stood over me. His shadow swallowed the moonlight. The machete hung loosely in his hand. Up close, I could smell him. Rot, sweat, something metallic. He crouched down beside me. His black eyes stared straight into mine. Then he reached into his pocket and slowly pulled out something red. A clown nose. He squeezed it. Squeak. His grin stretched wider. "You shouldn't have taken my nose," he whispered. The last thing I remember was the sound of that squeak and the truck driver shouting from somewhere far away. They found me on the road later that night. Alive. Barely. But the police never found the clown. They searched the woods for days. No footprints. No weapons. No clown noses. Nothing. The officers said I must have imagined parts of it. Shock, they called it. But I know what I saw hanging in those trees. And sometimes, when the wind is quiet late at night in that town, people say they hear something coming from the woods along that road. A faint sound. Rubber. Squeaking. Over. And over. And over again. I've always been afraid of clowns. Even as a kid, something about the painted smiles and exaggerated movements set off this gut-deep unease. I never thought that fear would follow me home one November night and almost get me killed. But it did. I was 14. My parents were out of town and my siblings had plans for the evening. My friend B came over and we decided to walk to a small carnival that had popped up a few blocks away in an empty parking lot behind the grocery store. The lot was nearly deserted. Dim carnival lights flickered across the rides, the banners flapped violently in the wind, and the cold cut through my jacket like knives. The whole place felt wrong. We wandered around for a bit, trying the ring toss and shooting the basketballs at the hoops. That's when we saw him. A clown. He didn't speak, he didn't wave, he just smiled. Too wide, too fixed, his lips stretched in a grin that felt unnatural. He moved slowly, deliberately, his arms waving like a mime performing for an invisible audience. Each step he took seemed calculated, like he was packing us, not performing for anyone else. B laughed. "He's kind of cool," she said, reaching out to pat him on the shoulder. The clown didn't react. He just tilted his head and continued his slow, silent performance as we walked away. But I could feel it in my stomach. He was watching us leave. The walk home should have been normal. Our neighborhood was usually quiet at night, but that evening the darkness felt heavier. Streetlights flickered. The wind moved through the trees in strange, unnatural ways, making the shadows stretch and bend. Then we heard it, footsteps, faint behind us, rustling in the leaves. Every time we turned around, nothing, just the empty streets. B whispered, "I think he's following us." I wanted to tell him it was nothing, that it was probably someone else. But the hairs on my neck were standing up, and my pulse felt like it was thrumming in my throat. "Let's just get home," I said, my voice shaking. When we reached my house, I fumbled through my keychain trying to find the right key in the dark. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped one. Then B nudged me. "Turn around." I did, and my stomach dropped. Across the street, partially hidden in the bushes by my neighbor's yard, he was there. The clown, staring, motionless, silent. His head tilted slightly, the red wig catching the flickering streetlight. That smile, stretched impossibly wide, was still fixed in place. The moment he realized we had seen him, he stepped out of the bushes. His movements were slow at first, then faster, deliberate. I could hear the soft thud of his shoes against the pavement, the rustle of his costume. His eyes were locked on us. That same grin never wavered. I fumbled with the key again, finally getting the door unlocked. We rushed inside, slamming it shut behind us. I immediately called my parents. my voice shaking so badly I could barely get the words out. They told us to lock all the doors, grab something to defend ourselves, and hide upstairs. We ran to my little brother's room and crouched by the window, peering out through the blinds. And there he was, standing in the driveway, staring straight up at us, like he knew exactly where we were. Then things got worse. He pulled something from his pocket. I couldn't see clearly, but the faint glint in the streetlight suggested metal, a knife, maybe a crowbar. He walked around the house slowly, testing the doors, peering into the windows. One sharp bang against the front door made us jump. He tilted his head, studying the house like a predator sizing up its prey. Every sound made us flinch. Every shadow seemed to move. My pulse was deafening in my ears. Time slowed. Minutes stretched into hours. After 10 minutes, he was still outside, circling the house, sometimes pausing below the windows, sometimes moving to the side, as if he was mapping every inch of the property. One bang on the front door echoed through the empty street, and I thought we were done for. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the driveway went silent. The wind whispered through the trees and the shadows returned to normal. The clown was gone, but we didn't breathe a sigh of relief. Where had he gone? Was he hiding nearby, watching, waiting for us to come outside again? The thought made my stomach turn. We stayed crouched in that room until my parents got home the next day. Every little noise outside made us jump. Every car that passed felt like him returning. I haven't seen him since, but I'll never forget that smile. The deliberate way he moved. The way it felt like he was hunting us. And maybe he's still out there somewhere waiting, watching. Maybe next time he won't leave quietly.